I like to say Bitcoin is a new technology that is built on the ancient way, just balances and scales. And so scripture tells us that, well, God tells us in scripture that the money that we use has to be just and fair and equal. So, in the old days, they used a literal scale. Bitcoin is the world's first just scale with finite supply that cannot be manipulated. The love of money is the root of all evil, because when you love money, it becomes your God, and anything that is your God, which is not God, is idolatry. You probably can't see. In God we trust, but everybody knows it. Everybody knows it's there. There's been some talk about we need to remove it because we're a secular nation and this and that, and then the Christians will come and say, no, we need to keep it because we need God to be our foundation, and our nation was founded on God. But the thing is, it should be removed because the money does not reflect the God in which it says they trust. Because if they trusted in God, this would not be our money, because this does not reflect the principles and the rule of God. This is a false balance. This is a scale which is unjust. And you're saying in God we trust, but the very fact that this exists demonstrates you don't trust God. I don't want to be rude or anything, but it's dumb. It's not intelligent. You can't be what you're not. You are either a male or a female, and you can't just say I feel. It's just stupid. There's no other way. So I think Gen Z, although they're kind of messed up now, I think when they're 30 and 40, they're gonna be probably the most zealous religious generation we've seen in a while, because they're going to look back and say, okay, that didn't work. It's obvious this way works. Having a family, being a man, being a woman, being normal and stuff, following Christ, believing in God, having morals.
What's up, everyone? My name is Vince. Welcome to the Bitcoin broadcast, where all conversations lead back to Bitcoin. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. We are currently on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, and Apple under the Bitcoin broadcast. On X, we are the BTC broadcast. My personal X account is Huddle, Florida. Our email is thebitcoinbroadcast@gmail.com. Feel free to DM me or email me for any business, any requests, or any questions. Without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the Bitcoin broadcast. Do you just want to kind of explain who you are, how you got into being a pastor and into Bitcoin, and how the two kind of mesh? That'd be great.
Yeah. So Pastor Coin is a sort of gimmick name for Twitter. It was, I was into Bitcoin, and I'm a pastor, and so, I saw the parallels between Bitcoin as a technology and monetary tool. Bitcoin is so difficult to really nail down. What is it? You could come to it from so many different perspectives. But from my perspective, it was theological, Christian, and so I saw Bitcoin as a biblical form of money. It aligns with what the Bible says about money. And so I tell people often, I'm a Bitcoiner because I'm a Christian. I'm not a Christian because I'm a Bitcoiner. And so I don't put the cart before the horse. Christianity is my worldview, Christ is Lord, and Bitcoin aligns with that. And so it kind of came to a point where, after understanding and studying not just Bitcoin, but the entire history of money. Now, I don't have the entire history of money memorized or anything, but studying the history of money and kind of how, in a broad sense, we got to where we are now with the money we have. becoming a Bitcoiner. And I don't even like to say that's kind of a weird way of saying it, becoming a Bitcoiner. It's like, it's not that you become something, it's just you adopt this technology, right? Nobody says I'm an interneter or, I'm a cell phoner. No, you just use these technologies for for your own benefit. It's kind of a weird thing, but I don't know how else to express it. When I began advocating for Bitcoin, it was from a perspective of I have no choice. My Christian faith kind of compels me to be a Bitcoiner. So that's who I am. I don't know. Pastor Coin was kind of. I'm surprised nobody took the name, honestly, by the time I got there. But it's nice that it was available and it's caught on. And so, yeah, I'm the Bitcoin pastor, I guess.
No, it's a cool name. Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, he's got a good one. He nailed that one. I like it.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so you are Christian then? Because pastor, I'm like, I mean, there's so many different sects of Christianity you could go down.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a Christian as well. I was actually raised Jewish. My dad was a rabbi for most of my upbringing. And once I left for college, I stopped being religious altogether. And as I've gotten older, I've become a Christian. And so now I go to church again, which has been great. And I think that's awesome. But how does Bitcoin and Christianity intersect? Because you said you are Christian first and then Bitcoin. And then you said because of the Bible. So how does that intersect?
Yeah. Well, it's at first glance when I talk to many Christians and they find out, I wrote a book on Bitcoin and the Bible, it's always like there's always curiosity. When I wrote the book, I didn't really expect much. I was happy if I sold 50 copies and, just kind of made the money back from the time I put into it or whatever. Well, that would have been more than 50, but I would have been happy with 50. But I didn't know what would come of it. But I've discovered that when you mention Bitcoin in the Bible in the same sentence, people are really curious. I didn't expect the curiosity to be this great. People are always like, I gotta see how this works. Like, because in most people's minds, there's Bitcoin and the Bible are like in different galaxies. They're not anywhere near each other in terms of relatability, right? There's the Bible, an ancient set of books that talk about God and Christ and morals and the end of the world and loving your neighbor and all these different things. And then there's Bitcoin, which is magic internet money. So what in the world do those two things have in common? What does the Lord have to do with Bitcoin? So I get it. It's kind of the perfect two things to bring together if you want to get someone's attention, because they immediately want to know, okay, either this guy's insane and I'm about to jump into the most ridiculous conspiracy theorist rabbit hole I've ever seen, which most people are into that. You see those YouTube channels that are all about conspiracies. They get millions of views. People love, even if it's not true, they don't care. They just like it. Or I'm about to see something maybe I haven't seen before. So that's true. And so Christianity and Bitcoin might not seem like they would go together, but they do. And the reason they do is because I like to say Bitcoin is a new technology that is built on the ancient way. And what I mean by that is the ancient way is just balances and scales. And so scripture tells us that God tells us in scripture that the money that we use has to be just and fair and equal. So, in the old days, they used a literal scale, and you would put your grain or whatever you're buying on the one side, and then you'd put your coins or your gold or your silver or whatever you're paying with on the other. And when it balances, that's a just and equal scale. They take the money, you take the grain, and you go on your way. But what would happen is merchants would have unjust scales, so they would manipulate the scales so that when you were buying something from them, you had to put more weight on your side than was necessary. And when they were selling, it would be the opposite. And so they would kind of rip you off on buying and on selling. So that's why God says you have to have a just weight and a just measure, so that you're getting paid for the right amount for what you're selling, and you're not, ripping people off. This is the ancient way, and it's a principle that seems so basic, so ancient, but it's relevant through all of time. And so fiat money, which is, I always have a dollar by me for illustrative purposes. Fiat money like this is what we would call a unjust weight and scale, because it's centrally controlled. It can be printed out of nothing. Well, not nothing. I guess paper isn't nothing, but you get the idea. It's not anything that takes any substantial amount of effort to produce. And so it's manipulated. These scales of money are now manipulated. The Federal Reserve is controlling both ends of the scale now. They can manipulate the value of this money up or down as much as they like, and we're forced to use it. So Bitcoin comes in the picture now as this technological innovation that has, in a really unique way, encoded a just weight and measure into the very protocol and system. Bitcoin is the world's first just scale with finite supply that cannot be manipulated one way or the other. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. Now, people will say, oh, the price of Bitcoin is manipulated. Yeah, because when you denominate in a manipulated money, then of course the price of the thing is going to be manipulated by the denominator. But if you just take Bitcoin as Bitcoin internally in the system, in the protocol, it's not manipulated. It works the way it should work, and it is a just weight and just balance. So maybe that was a long-winded way of saying that Bitcoin has encoded the basic fundamental rules of money, which God has given us, into a protocol that works on proof of work and not on, I guess you could say, proof of stake.
That's awesome. I've never heard it explained like that. And I think the way that you just did is a great example. No, I like that a lot. That was really cool. Do you preach that in your churches then?
Sometimes, if it is appropriate, based on what passage I might be in. Like, you're not going to hear that every week, because not every passage in the Bible deals with that. So, but yeah, if it's appropriate, and if it's consistent with the passage, then yeah, I have preached similar things.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you announce yourself as Pastor Coin in the church then? Or is that completely
No,
separate? You're okay. So you're
no,
just
no.
the pastor.
Most people in my church, I don't even think know Pastor Coin. Probably good that they don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to keep it separate too. No, that's awesome. So then when you do bring it up, do you ever get like do people come up to you and they're like, how does Bitcoin work? And does it like extend past the church?
In the beginning, yeah. In the beginning, it was a lot of people. Now everybody just kind of knows. If you've been in my church for any amount of time, you're probably a Bitcoiner by now. And if you're not a Bitcoiner by now, then you just don't care, and that's okay. You just do whatever you like. But everybody knows in my church. It's been like 5 years. So everybody in my city also knows what I stand for, and why I'm a Bitcoiner. And I've lost members of the church because of this. But especially in the beginning, 2021, 22, of course, saw the bear market. And, there was a lot of, I told you so, you're irresponsible, you're stupid, people are losing money because of you, blah, 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 blah. And I kind of just tuned them out and kept stacking. and here we are. So the thesis played out well. Hard money always wins. And whatever, I
Does
don't
your
care.
does your church hold the Bitcoin on its balance sheet?
Yeah, we have Bitcoin on our balance sheet. And that's where I got some flack from people, locally especially. They were like, this isn't a responsible way to use God's money. And when I hear stuff like that, at this point in the game, when I hear stuff like that, I don't even respond, because I kind of feel like Satoshi. Like, if I don't have, if you don't understand it, I don't have time to explain it. Like, I wrote a book. Read the book. If you don't want to read the book, then don't waste my time, right? If you just want to criticize and be a negative Nancy and you're not being responsible and this, and you don't want to read the book, you don't want to engage with the material, get lost. I don't have time for you. And I know that sounds kind of harsh, but at the same time, like, you only live once. I know that's kind of YOLO thing to say, but it's like you only live once, and why am I going to waste time with people who don't get it? It's like, whatever. Where was I going with this? What did you ask?
Just how, if people, how they ask about it, and then you started to go into, well, you've lost people because of explaining it, but
Oh yeah. So those people who view it as a sort of a negative thing for the church to have Bitcoin, like a negative stewardship, or like it's irresponsible or whatever. When somebody is serious and wants to know, I'll engage them, and usually what I'll say to somebody who is a bit apprehensive, because I talk to pastors all the time. They're like, should I have Bitcoin for the church, and how do I approach that? And my number one advice to them is, well, you have two options, right? You can get Bitcoin or you can not get Bitcoin. When you don't have Bitcoin, what you have is fiat money, and this is guaranteed to lose value. Like, there's no doubt this currency here, this $1, will get less than you can get today in the future. You wait long enough, this will get you less, right? We all know that. Everybody knows that. Even the pastors I talk to know that. That's a guaranteed thing. With Bitcoin, historically, it is volatile. But if you're saving the Bitcoin, if you're not spending the Bitcoin anytime soon as a church, then you have something that's mathematically fixed in supply being denominated in something that is, infinitely printed in supply. So what do you think is going to happen? What is the more responsible thing to do? I'll tell you what, for our church, we bought in I think we started in 21. We survived 22. 23, 24, now we're in 25. And our savings, because we've saved in Bitcoin, has grown to about 2 years of operating expenses. And we only bought Bitcoin with excess. Okay? We didn't go all in. We didn't, if we had excess, we bought Bitcoin. If we had equipment we weren't using, like we had an old sound system that was collecting dust, well, we sold it and we bought Bitcoin. So we used excess money and money from the sale of things that we didn't need, and we bought Bitcoin. And that very conservative approach has appreciated to about 2 years of operating expenses. So who was the one who was irresponsible?
that's awesome.
In the parable of the talents, Jesus tells about a master who had an estate, and he tells his servants, I'm going on a trip, here's my estate, here's the money, look after it for me, so when I come back, it's there, right? So I don't know if you know the parable, but one servant goes out and he turns his talents, he doubles it. Another one goes out and he doesn't double it, but he gets like 25% gain or something. Then the next guy goes out and he buries the money because he's too afraid. He doesn't want to lose it. So when the master comes back, he says, all right, what happened with my estate? The one guy says, oh, look, I doubled it. He goes, oh, wow, great job. I'm going to promote you to a higher position. The next guy comes, he goes, I wasn't able to double it, but I got some gain. He goes, okay, great job. I'm going to promote you as well. Then the next guy comes and says, I know you're I forget exactly how he says it, but you're like a shrewd guy or you're a harsh guy, and I was afraid, and so I buried the money. Here's what you gave me. And he says, you foolish and you wicked servant, why didn't you at least put it in the bank to earn some interest? And he cast the guy out. And so what we learn from that parable is that risk isn't bad. Risk isn't bad. Life is inherently risky. And Jesus himself tells us that taking calculated, wise risks with money is commendable. Burying your money is not, right? Hanging on to just, whatever. So that same principle applies, I think with Bitcoin and with church finances. There are risks involved, but if you're smart with it, the risk outweighs the downside, I think. This is going down forever. This is down forever technology. I don't think Bitcoin is get rich quick technology, but I like to refer to it more as don't get poor slowly technology.
I mean, if you bought 10 years ago and you bought a lot of it, you got rich pretty dang quick. I mean,
quick relatively, yeah, you're right. Relative to the time, yeah, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, but I completely agree. I mean, especially as adoption happens and the curve slows down, the gains will be less and less. But I agree with you. It is not a get rich quick thing, and it's a way to protect yourself from your devaluing dollar.
Yeah.
That is so cool though that you have 2 years of expenses covered just from buying Bitcoin with your excess money. Because I was going to ask, do you take donations in Bitcoin? Do you get the tithing and then, but you already kind of answered that, but how does that work exactly? Do you take the tithing, you separate all your expenses, and then what you have left over goes to Bitcoin after you've paid people, paid for utilities, all that good stuff? How does that exactly work?
Yeah, so if at the end of the month everything's paid, so we're a very small church. We don't own a building. We don't have a huge staff. I get like a part-time income. And so once I'm paid, once the rent is paid, once anything else, maybe expenses that come up, are paid, then if we have anything extra left, we buy Bitcoin. For a couple of years, there was a time where we didn't have anything extra left, right? Yeah, like last year we broke even. The year before that, we were negative for the year, substantially negative actually. So we didn't buy any Bitcoin that year. But what ended up happening was, you had that rough year where things didn't go the way you would want with money. But it didn't really matter because the Bitcoin we had actually, if you included the appreciation of the Bitcoin, we were actually in the green that year. So in fiat terms, we were in the red, but our whole balance sheet was actually tremendously in the green just because we had Bitcoin sitting there, right? So that's the kind of thing Bitcoin does. And this is, I talk to a lot of church planters, and so these are guys with smaller churches like me who are just starting. We don't have enough money to barely make it, and this. So you think I do? You think we do? We're like a church of like 15 people, right? If we could do it, anybody could do it. And it's a long-term play, and it's a long-term benefit. So I think the smaller churches are the ones that can benefit the most from Bitcoin, because the bigger churches are, when I've talked to them, they are, with few exceptions, but for the most part, they're kind of like the rich people, right? In terms of, we have enough, why would we want Bitcoin? Like, we don't need a thing like that. That's not what they'll say, but it's like, well, we have a $3 million budget and our revenue was 5 million, right? We're doing okay. We don't need your Bitcoin. Okay, fine. But for guys like me and others who have small churches that have very small budgets and it's tight, something like Bitcoin preserving your purchasing power into the future is a huge advantage. And for us, it's been a huge advantage because now we're at a point where we can have a red year and still be technically green. Like, we don't have to worry about money now.
That's so awesome. It's have you heard the term, it's like a cheat code? You just incorporate Bitcoin into your business, and it's just this ultimate cheat code to get ahead, especially when you don't have the funds. I mean, it doesn't even take an exponential amount of Bitcoin to get to that point. It's just a slow grind, and you just keep doing it and keep doing it, and then all of a sudden you have enough, and you're like, money doesn't matter anymore. Now we're sitting good.
It almost happened by accident, you know. Well, I mean, it wasn't by accident, but it's kind of felt like that because we weren't aggressive with Bitcoin. We were just, you know, using what we had in a very conservative way. And next thing you know, because we buy the Bitcoin and you don't look at it, right? You just buy it and you move on. Next thing you know, you look at the balance and you go, wait a minute, this is like I'm doing the year-end financials, and I'm going, okay, you know, how do we do this year? And looking at the numbers, and then you go, whoa, like that Bitcoin is pretty. That number is getting big, and every year is getting bigger, and we're not adding like that much more to it. You know what I mean? And now I'm looking at it, going, wow, we could like not take in a single donation for 2 years and still operate on the level we're operating. So it opens the door for a lot more opportunity. I could hire somebody else now. I can, you know, upgrade the building maybe. Like there's so much we could do now as a 15-person church that we shouldn't be able to do.
That's incredible. That's absolutely amazing. Do you guys do you still accept tithing then? Is it just, or how do you talk about tithing then? Is more specific.
I don't talk about it at all.
Okay.
I don't. We don't even have an offering time on Sunday. It's just kind of like that's a good question. How do I talk about it? Because I really don't. Like we have a box that is labeled offering, and people just kind of give. I don't coach them. I don't tell them. People just kind of see it, and some people, some old school people, they like to give cash, so they'll put cash in the box. But most people give through online, and so yeah, I don't talk about it. I don't mention it. People just do it. Like when you become a member of the church, there's like a covenant form, and in there it says like, you know, as a member, you're going to support the ministry financially, and you're committing to 10% and this and this. But that's really it. Like after that, you're not going to hear me talk about tithes. You're not going to hear me talk about giving or money. People just kind of do it, and it's worked out for us. Not really talking about it has worked well for us. And it's helpful because people will be like, "All you guys want is money." It's like, what are you talking about? We don't even mention money.
That's awesome. Do you guys accept Bitcoin on your website or anything?
Yeah, on our website you can give Bitcoin.
That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
we went to one church when we first moved here to Florida, and they talked about tithing. I think too much. That's why we kind of got turned off from it. I think they were kind of running it like a business, like it was their cash cow, and that's the vibe we got. After like 2 or 3 times of going, it was so we decided to stop going. But anyway, after hearing it over and over about tithing, I've always wanted to like orange pill a church because I think it'd be so cool to have a church just grow organically with Bitcoin. And now the church we go to is kind of big, so I think they do have a big budget. I don't know if they would be willing to accept Bitcoin at this point. Because like you said, they have the probably multi-million-dollar budget. So I don't know if they would be up for it, but I do plan on buying your book, and hopefully I can meet the pastor at some point and pass that along. I'm disappointed I didn't get to read your book before this. It came up kind of quick, but I do plan on reading it, and I do plan on giving it to my church because I think that's absolutely awesome. And how you described Bitcoin in terms of, you know, basically dirty money versus clean money.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
How do you explain then money is the root of all evilness? I know that's not the exact quote from the Bible. I can't think of it, and I should have looked that up. But how do you explain something like that?
Yeah, so the quote is the love of money is the root of all evil, or all kinds of evil, depends on the translation. Uh, so that's an often brought up passage to me, especially, which is ironic because now as you're asking these questions, I'm the guy that gets crapped on for talking about money too much, but if you've ever been to my church, you'll never even hear me ask you for a tithe. So it's kind of funny that that's worked out that way. But yeah, so yeah, of course, the love of money is the root of all evil, because when you love money, it becomes your god, and anything that is your god, which is not God, is idolatry. And so when you worship money, you're worshiping something which God has given us in order to serve others and to worship and honor Him. So it's just a tool, right? Just money is a tool to an end. The end is to take dominion of the earth, to be fruitful and multiply. That's it. So we need a money which will best serve us to that end. Now, if the end goal is fruitfulness, multiplication, humans ruling the earth under the dominion and rule of God and His Son, Jesus Christ, if that's the end goal, which it is, then we need a money which reflects that. Of course, this doesn't. And the irony of this money is that it says, "In God we trust." That's the irony, is that it's, and I know there's a lot of talk, well, maybe not a lot of talk, but there's been talk in the past about removing it. You probably can't see, "In God we trust," but everybody knows it's there. Everybody knows it's there. There's been some talk about we need to remove it because we're a secular nation and this and that, and then the Christians will come and say, "No, we need to keep it because we need God to be our foundation, and our nation was founded on God." But the thing is, it should be removed because the money does not reflect the God in which it says they trust. Because if they trusted in God, this would not be our money, because this does not reflect the principles and the rule of God. This is a false balance. This is a scale which is unjust. And you're saying, "In God we trust," but the very fact that this exists demonstrates you don't trust God. So I know I just went on a little tangent there, but that's really the crux of the matter, is we need a money that's going to reflect and serve us. So back to the question, the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, no, duh, this proves it. This is the love of money. Why is this the love of money? Because it's not following the rule of God. So you love your money more than the rule of God. You rather have a fake fiat money you can print and use to control the world and have wars and so on and so forth. You rather have this than just trusting God with a just scale. So yeah, the love of money is the root of all evil, which is why I'm a Bitcoiner, dummy.
That's awesome. I love that. That was a great rant. That's going to be a very clippable rant right there.
Yeah.
um, so have you noticed, since you integrated Bitcoin into your church, have you noticed other people get excited about, like, let's just say something as stupid as price goes up, or is that mainly you in the background and you're like, "Hey, look at the balance sheet. This is great. It's going up." Have you noticed any changes in your church or
Nobody cares, man. It's so weird. Nobody cares. Like, you know, you see the budget or whatever, and go, "Oh, hey, we had a red year, but turns out it was really green because of Bitcoin." And people are like, "That's nice." Nobody really cares. It's weird, which it's kind of nice. I kind of like it because there's really no pressure. It's just like, okay, this is what we're doing. Everyone's on board. Let's move on with life. So in that sense, it's great because I don't have to really sell anybody on anything or justify anything. It's just like, this is what we're doing. Everyone's like, great, let's do ministry. Who cares? Um, but in terms of on a personal level, there have been people in the church who adopted Bitcoin in their own personal lives, and they have benefited greatly. Just these are normal people working your average jobs who are hurting from inflation and the whole deal. But now they're doing good. They're doing okay. They're not under the same stresses and pressures as their peers. I hear from people in the church saying, like, everybody at work is stressed because of possible layoffs, and they're asking me, "Why aren't you stressed?" Why? Well, because I have Bitcoin. I've been telling you guys, maybe get some Bitcoin. And so there's people in my church who've been able to buy, things which they couldn't buy. Like, one guy had a car that was having difficulty. Well, he was able to buy a nice new car with no financing, and because of Bitcoin, and he's not stressed, and his family's doing well. And so that's been probably the best. My favorite thing to watch has been just the people getting the vision, understanding the thesis here, applying it to their own life, and now benefiting from it. No one's getting filthy rich, no one's driving Lambos, no one's buying mansions, but also nobody is suffering because of inflation. Nobody is stressed at work because they might, get laid off for a couple months. There's one guy who actually took 3 months off of work and went traveling around the world during a time of cuts and layoffs. And his coworkers were like, "How are you doing it?" "Bitcoin. I told you guys. I've been telling you guys, and you don't want to, And so now I'm taking 3 months off while you guys are stressing because you're laid off." So that's been my favorite thing to watch, is people winning by just adopting a Bitcoin standard in their own life. And those who left the church, it's like, where are you now, guys? Right? "Oh, you're getting laid off and you're stressed? I feel bad. Like, I don't like it, but we tried to help you and you took it personally." So I don't know what to say.
That's awesome. That's so cool to hear. All right, I have to ask one kind of personal question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but it pertains to taxes and the church. I'm not even sure how taxes and being a church work. I haven't done any research. So if you guys sell Bitcoin, do you guys have to pay taxes on that? How does all of that work?
No, there's no taxes.
Just flat,
Just
no
straight up.
tax. Every dollar that you guys get in, move to Bitcoin, there's no tax no matter what. Because
No.
you're a church?
Exactly. We're tax exempt on everything. Churches don't pay taxes on anything. No property tax, nothing. Only tax we pay, I guess, is like sales tax if we buy something.
That is awesome. That's
why it's a no-brainer. That's
Yeah,
why it's a no-brainer for churches. Like, guys, you're tax exempt. But, like, this is such a no-brainer.
that's incredible. Could you imagine the price of Bitcoin if there was zero taxes on selling it? And
Yep.
the church has an advantage already set in place where they don't have to.
Yep.
That is a absolute no-brainer.
And not only that, but we can issue tax receipts to people who give in Bitcoin, right? So you as a member can offset your taxes by giving Bitcoin to the church. You know what I mean? So
yeah, like as a donation, yeah.
As a donation, yeah. So if you give Bitcoin to the church, that's tax deductible for you. It's tax deductible for your own taxes, and it's tax free for the church. So it's like everybody wins.
I don't get why more churches wouldn't do that. Instead, you would hold dollars, and that value is just going down, and you can just hold Bitcoin, not have to worry about taxes, and you get rich off of it. I don't know. Seems pretty cool to me.
It's like, especially for bigger churches, like, you guys have excess capital that you don't need. Like, you won't miss it if you can park. If like, there's a particular church in my town that I know could easily buy 1 Bitcoin per year and not miss that money. Like, it won't affect them at all. But over the span of 5 to 10 years, will become a massively deep pool of capital they can pull from to do all kinds of great stuff. Like there's churches out here. This is one of my most ranty podcasts I've ever done. I don't know what's in the water today, but I'm feeling feisty.
I love it.
There's churches I know that have taken out multi-million-dollar loans, okay, to do whatever, building updates or whatever they did, new roof or whatever. Okay, so you're gonna take out $1 million loan with a godless bank, pay them interest, and that's good stewardship, but you won't allocate Bitcoin, and that's bad stewardship. Like, you could have paid for all your renovations in cash, tax-free, by just saving in Bitcoin. Just a little here and a little there. But instead, you take money from the bank and you pay them interest. And everybody thinks and then you have a building fund, and then you have to ask people for more money. Hey, we need a new roof, everybody. Can you spare an extra 5% in your offering? It's like people are already feeling the pinch. It's hard enough out here for normal folks, and now you want to ask them for more money in order to fix the roof or get new chairs or fill in the blank, when you could have just took like 5% and bought Bitcoin the last 5 years and put no extra burden on anybody else. You tell me what's a better strategy.
No, I completely agree. And
What I would do if our church was one that operated on a consistent surplus is I would tithe Bitcoin. So I would take 10% church revenues and buy Bitcoin. So people give a tithe, and then we take the tithe and we tithe Bitcoin. And that would be our long-term savings. And that's money you wouldn't miss. It's not hard for a lot of these churches to do. They have the budget. An extra 10% going into savings is not an extraordinary sacrifice, but that would be my strategy. That's what I do for my personal finances. Personally, when I get paid, I tithe 10% to church, and then I tithe 10% to Bitcoin. 10% of my income is my DCA.
I'm going to use a lot of what you've been talking about when I get to talk to my church about this. Because you've dropped like a wealth of knowledge. I loved all these little rants. They were great. But I kind of wanted to switch up a little bit. You do live in Canada. Things are crazy in Canada. Politically, things are always crazy. I mean, the news likes to make it seem like everything is crazy all the time. In Canada, how do you see, is it a lost hope up there? Do you see a way forward politically up there?
No, I don't want to be negative, but I just don't. I've been involved to a very low degree in politics. They always say get involved if you want to see change. I've tried, and the energy output it takes to be involved to see any meaningful change doesn't or the input does not make the output worth it. I don't know if that makes any sense. But the amount of energy I'm going to spend to try to bring change, probably just to fail, could have been used in a more productive way to actually change life for people around me on a local level. That would actually have an impact. Like, what's a bigger impact? I teach financial literacy. I teach Bitcoin to those in my little circle of influence in my church who now have some level of financial freedom that they wouldn't have had. Or I can go lobby the government or get involved in municipal politics or be a member of the Conservative Party and have zero impact. Like, what's a bigger impact on people's lives, right? So it got to a point. It got to a point where I just analyzed, okay, what am I using my time to do? What impact is it having? I spent the years of 2020 and 2021 involved in the freedom movement, protesting, the whole mask thing, not wearing a mask, doing that whole thing, not getting vaccinated. And I don't regret any of that. Like, I'll do it again. In terms of not wearing a mask and not being vaccinated, like, I'll do it again, that's no problem. But the protesting, the trying to change people's minds in that area, it was like nobody cares, and the government will just stomp you out. Like what really was the catalyst for this change was the trucker protest. Where I saw the trucker protest, I'm like, yes, it's working. Finally, all the effort and the protesting, it's kind of culminating in this trucker protest, and Ottawa's getting smashed, and Trudeau's running from the Capitol scared. We're winning. This is great. And then they just bring in the RCMP with horses and all this, and they stomp on people, and they arrest people, and they beat up the truckers. They freeze your bank accounts and do all this type of stuff. And then I realized, okay, these people don't care. The government is so corrupt, is so far gone, is so wicked, is so demonic that there is no hope of reform at that level. I come from communist Romania. Well, my family did. I was a baby, but we came from that context. And there was no hope of reform for Romania. The only way it changed was with violent revolution. And I'm not saying violent revolution is the way. I'm not suggesting for violent revolution. But when I look through history, I never see a peaceful reformation happen in a totalitarian place. If there is one, I'd like to know. Maybe there is, maybe I'm missing something. But usually it boils over to that. And it's too bad that it boils over to that. But what I've seen is that the only thing that stands after such a government or a totalitarian dictator or whatever, after that falls, and it always falls one way or another, the only thing I see that stands after that are those who were quietly building while everyone else was trying to reform the corruption. And to me, and I think it's not just to me, I think it's just a historical fact, the only institution that survives is the church. And it's always been the church. There have been tyrants and dictators and communist regimes, and they've there's been a lot. And I'll tell you what, only the church survives. So I figure I might as well just put my effort locally to help educate my own brethren and encourage us to have families and to train our children and to build wealth for our children so that when this thing falls, and it will, we'll be standing on solid ground while everyone else, unfortunately, will have to deal with the cleanup and the rubble. That's my thesis.
That's fair. I agree. I think one cool thing that did come out of the whole 2020 thing is a lot of younger people saw it, and they saw what was happening. And I think that a lot of people are actually coming back to Christianity because the wokeness has gone so far and people didn't know where to turn to. And I honestly do think that a lot of people have turned towards Jesus. They've gone back to faith and religion. And I think that's really cool to see. It's kind of a sign that people are healing, like a healing society in a way, even though I know things are still crooked, they're still backwards, there's still a lot of, corrupt government, and there's not much we can do about it. But as society as a whole, I think it's pretty cool that society has been shifting in that way, especially in the younger generation. I've seen that trending. I don't know if you've noticed a similar thing.
Yeah, I sort of have. I said, when did I, maybe 10 years ago, when the LGBT stuff started gaining momentum, maybe around 2014, 2015. I mean, it was around before that, but I feel like it accelerated around 2014 and 15. And then 2020 was just a rocket ship of debauchery. But I said around that time, because everybody was like, oh, like this is terrible. And our kids are gonna, be influenced by this. And by and large, they were right. But I said, you know what, guys? I feel like what's going to happen long term is this thing will accelerate to a point of absurdity, and then it'll crash. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think it has accelerated to a point of, like, the trans stuff. It's like, this is absurd, guys. Like, this is absurd. This is so stupid. Like, there's no other way I could put it. I don't want to be rude or anything, but, like, it's dumb. It's not intelligent. Like, you can't be what you're not. You are either a male or a female, and like, you can't just say I feel. It's just stupid. There's no other way. So it's crashing now, and and what I think will happen is a hard turn to Christianity. I think Gen Z, although they're kind of like messed up now, I think when they're 30 and 40, they're going to be probably the most zealous religious generation we've seen in a while, because they're going to look back and say, okay, that didn't work. That was crazy what the adults were telling us was okay. That was so stupid and dumb. We'll never go back to that. It's obvious this way works. Having a family, being a man, being a woman, being normal and stuff, following Christ, believing in God, having morals. There's going to be such a hard turn to that, which I think might be some of the saving grace in all of this, is that the generation that is the TikTok generation of today, I'm hopeful, will grow up and realize how stupid that was and take a hard right turn to Christ. That's been my idea since 2015. I said this is going to happen. Those babies that were born in 2015, 2014, when they're 40 and 50, are going to be your right-wing Christian, what's called today right-wing Christian extremists. It only makes sense. They're going to rebel against the former way.
I agree. I completely agree. And I think it has gone too far. I think we've reached that pinnacle of absurdity. I mean, the fact that there's people identifying as cats in a public school and they put like a litter box in there for them.
Yeah.
I'm like, where have we come? How did we get here? And it's absolutely insane. I agree with you 100%. Um, that's awesome. All right, one more thing I got to ask you. Back to Bitcoin. How do you think these cycles are going? Any price predictions? You don't have to give a price prediction, but how are you feeling with the sentiment around Bitcoin? Anything like that?
Oh, let's see. Well, everybody is like disappointed. Sentiment doesn't seem to be good, which makes me very bullish because whenever sentiment's bad, we're either near the bottom or about to explode higher. So that's sort of my contrarian view of things. The classic saying, when there's blood in the streets, buy and stuff like that. Not really. There's not really blood in the streets, but it seems like a much softer Bitcoiner generation, maybe. I mean, 10% drawdowns make everybody flip their lid. It's like, what are you guys like so upset about? We're over, excuse me, we're over 100,000, and you're mad because we dumped from 124 to 110. I don't know, man. I'm bullish. I'm always bullish. I think we go higher this year. It's August, September. There's always a fake out in September. Like, how long have you been here? Of course, September is going to be kind of, although it's not even been that bad, to be honest. September's not been that bad. Neither was August. So, I don't know what to make of it. I think we go higher, and there's some catalysts that will probably bring us there, rate cuts and so forth. So, I'm expecting at least 150 by Christmas. I'd like to see 200. I don't know, maybe, but everybody's making predictions, so I'm either seeing super bullish like 400 or like really conservative 140. So maybe somewhere in the middle, wherever that is. Either way, I don't care. I'm buying.
That's fair enough. Um, hey, are you writing a new book by any chance?
Yes, I am. Well, it's already done.
Do you want? Oh, it is already done.
This one.
Do you want to
It's
tell
not
me
out
about it
yet.
really quick?
This is Truth in Code. It's my first book was about Bitcoin in terms of the case for Bitcoin in the fiat world as a Christian. So like, here's fiat, here's Bitcoin. Bitcoin aligns with God's principles, fiat doesn't. Make your choice. This book deals more with economic theory in terms of like a Christian economic theory, and how Bitcoin has encoded Christian economic theory into its protocol. So it talks about it's kind of like a mixture of Austrian economics with Christian economics and the history of both, and how it really played out in history that Christian thinking around economics was adopted by the Austrians and sort of secularized in a way. But really the foundation for sound economics is the Bible. So this book kind of goes through that and then ties it to Bitcoin and how Bitcoin has encoded those principles into its protocol. So, like, for example, like some of the chapters deal with property rights, subjective value, time preference, human action, distributed knowledge, things like that, and tying it together with Bitcoin. So that's why it's called Truth in Code, because Bitcoin has encoded the Christian truth about economics.
That's awesome.
And it's really if you like pictures, there's lots of colorful pictures. So there's a sneak peek. I like pictures, so
No, that's awesome. No, I appreciate it. I'll make sure to pick up both of them. When does that one come out?
September 30th.
Oh, geez. Okay. So in like
If
20
you also
days.
want to know what the Bible says about taxes, this is another one I wrote. Render to God. This doesn't have anything to do with Bitcoin, although there's like a paragraph about Bitcoin, but this is about what the Bible says about taxation, how we should think about taxation.
Okay, sweet. Do you want to shill anything, any links, your YouTube or anything like that?
You just go to my website, thebibleandbitcoin.com. I have a YouTube channel too, but it's just the Bible and Bitcoin. And yeah, just on Twitter, you can find me at Pastor Coin.
Well, hey, I really appreciate you doing this. This was a lot of fun. Uh, that you had some amazing rants in there, and I loved them. And I'm gonna save them for my own arguments in the future.
Nice. Yeah, clip them and spread them abroad.
Yeah.